Hi everybody, welcome to the second part of the devlog for Midwest 90 Rapid City. And today we're going to be focusing all about the narrative of the game, the story of the game. And with me today as a special guest is our narrative director, Shern Chong. Shern Chong, hey, go ahead, Shern, go ahead, take it away.
Hi guys,
Introduce
I
yourself.
I guess this is a really global chatting, and I don't know where you guys are coming all over the place, but hello, planet Earth.
Yeah, hello everybody from all around the world. Welcome to Devlog 2. Well, anyway, like I mentioned before, we're going to be talking about the narrative and the story aspect of the game. And before I go into too much details, I'll just talk a little bit about how my preferences when it comes to narrative in games. I really like games with a lot of stories, and especially, the more interesting the story, the more well crafted the story, and how people present, going and talking to people, getting information from people. Uh, the more well that is done, the more deeper I get sucked into the immersion of the game. And one of my favorite games is for this has always been like Planescape Torment is probably one of my favorite
Oh
narrative
yeah,
based.
that's always a common choice. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like
Planescape
the
Torment.
standard bearer for
Yeah,
story based.
it's great. Like, until today, right? I can't imagine how they came up with such a great story. And also, to be honest, like Fallout is a big inspiration for this game. So, and Fallout also is coming from the same developers, right? And yeah, I love that as well about Fallout. Even though the interface was a bit clunky at that time when it came to Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, but the story was exceptional. The characters just were brilliant. But Shern is a bit different. Shern is a bit more is kind of like different when it comes to his approach when it comes to narrative in
Yeah,
games.
it's always something we're all laughing about, guys, because you see, I'm technically a professional writer, so you would think that someone who's a professional writer who writes scripts will be all about story being the most important element. When it comes to video games, I learned because I also do design is that the less interrupted the players in the flow of the play, the better. So I was actually more impressed with games that try to use narrative through other channels other than the usual choice, which is the cutscene. Because cutscene means you can't do anything. Which is why I like Fallout 1 and 2. I noticed that they do a very prose like sort of description. You click on something and you investigate it, and they'll tell you what's there, and you can read it down there. So I actually prefer games where they do as little narration as possible in terms of heavy story through cutscenes.
Yeah. Have
The
you played?
culprits being like,
Have
what
you
was that?
played? Sorry, have you played like Bioshock and yeah, some of the shock games, like Bioshock and I don't know, Dishonored and things like that. Because the reason why I bring that up is because, like you said, right, you don't want it to be told through like a cutscene or anything like that. But they do a lot of world building through the environment in those type of games. So yeah, sorry, just carry on.
So I mean, yeah, the they one of the things that contemporary games now do is that as you're walking and moving, you're hearing it come. So it's either someone speaking from a PA system, or you're getting a feed from your own mic if it's a sci-fi game. With fantasy, maybe you hear it from the voice of your conscience or some elder god like guiding you. So everyone's trying to find ways to not have the player need to totally focus on that and not be able to do anything. Uh, it does change the way we do our narrative because it means that you don't have time to like do a long way because the person who's moving and active, right? He needs to hear what's the key information, which is why I like Fallout. Fallout allows you to like for the player to stop what they're doing and just to like listen to stuff, and I think that's also very valuable. Bastion was actually very unique. Bastion was a narrator keeps talking in very short lines as you're playing through the game. The main character doesn't speak at all. And in Thief One, uh, you only hear Garrett's voice every now and then in the game, moving you through the objectives or in very short cutscenes in between. And the cutscenes almost feels more like a briefing, like what is that job going to be, your next thieving skill. So I thought that those were more on point. Not to
Yeah.
say that I don't enjoy long ones. When I played Deus Ex Human Revolution, I really enjoyed some of the conversations, but after a certain while, the back of my head starts to feel twingy. It's like, okay, it's getting a bit long. I'm enjoying it as a player, but as a developer, like, okay, that's getting a bit long. Uh, is there any way to be more streamlined about it, right? So, I mean, it's going to be an ageless debate. It's just that I tend to surprise people around me when I say, even though I like writing stories, but when it comes to games, the narrative, I always try to ask myself, how can it come through everything else in the game? The costumes, the world, the typography, the characters themselves having their own in-game conversations, so on and so forth.
I remember the last time we were having a conversation about this, and you brought up Bastion as well, and we both loved the narrative for Bastion, right? I mean, the guy's voice
Logan
was,
Cunningham.
yeah, Logan Cunningham. His voice was great, and we were actually considering, right, the other day when we were talking about it, if we have the budget, if we can
His
find the
voice,
additional
I mean,
budget, yeah, it'll be
Logan,
great to
if you're
have him.
hearing this, like we are looking for you.
Yeah, we're looking for the money first, and then we can then we'll go looking for you. But yeah, it would be great to have somebody like that to at least do like the starting intros for Midwest 90 and to talk about a bit of the world and everything. But okay, in regards to Midwest 90, how we plan to do the narrative is we want to have the narratives done kind of like both ways. Your decisions in the game, of course, have an effect of your business, which is a restaurant, but it also has an impact on the people around the town. But how you want to know about the story, all the events that take place in the town, those have to happen through talking with NPC characters in the town, mostly with the vendors. And we have a lot of interesting characters that we've worked on, right, Shern? And
Yep.
we've put a lot of effort into making our characters feel interesting, but at the same time very grounded people, like actual people might feel like you might meet in the Midwest.
And one of the things that we're trying to do also is we sort of like how Fallout and Planescape is doing, and we're thinking like normally this kind of games, tycoon game, they do not usually have so much focus on narrative. And the thing is, with the premise for M90, uh, it does benefit from having a little bit more exploration in the narrative space. And we were thinking like, what if we can do like a leaner version? So because this is a survival tycoon game, not just a pure tycoon game, and survival tends to have quite a bit of symbolic narrative going in. And we are learning from Fallout and Planescape that if we include not just the characters speaking with you, but you actually can read a descriptive, like a prose. It's almost like a little short little novel. I won't say novel, like a short story. You know how you have the adventure book and you flip and you read a very short thing going on and you hear people speak. That's the kind of things that we're trying to do. Having said that, just a segue, friends, if you are curious to share, what we want to know is to list down what you think is your top three overrated story-based games and what is your top three underrated
Underrated.
story-based games. Now, there's a difference between games with a lot of cutscenes and story-based games. Story-based games meaning that the game required that kind of narrative to be the main focus of your entire material. So even then, I'm sure some of you think this game is a story-based game, and someone else say this is not a story-based game. So that's great for conversations, because that's one of the things about creativity. Clash of opinions always bring out
Yeah,
what
guys, if
works.
you want to share what Sean said about it, the top three underrated or overrated the narrative games, please share it in the Ask the Dev session. Or if later when we share this video, once we upload this video and we share this video in our Discord community, we'll open up a thread for that. And you can basically ask your questions over there. We'll be checking every day, and we'll be responding as soon as we see as soon as we see the questions. We'll also be sharing this video on Facebook, so if you're seeing from Facebook and our other social media channels, just go ahead and post the questions there anytime. All right? Yeah, sure.
You are probably wondering like how did all this narrative talk actually come towards even leading to this video game, right? So Cage always has an origin story right on his sleeve, ready to pick up his pocket to share, because that came about actually with a third person who is not in this place. So you will see this person in the next devlog.
Mhm.
Cage, why don't you
I'm not too
regale
sure
them
whether
on
he
the
is available for the next devlog, but we'll try and get him in as soon as possible, and that's Kevin. And Kevin Boone Kenley, he's basically a good friend of ours. And by the way, Sean also before we had started working on this project has been a long friend of mine. We used to work in another game studio together, and we became fast friends when we were working there. And through Sean, I got to know Kevin, and Kevin is a restaurant owner here in Malaysia, specifically here in Petaling Jaya. And his restaurant is Midwest Kitchen, right? And his restaurant is the whole inspiration for the game, for Midwest 90 Rapid City. But I think in terms of how the idea, like the genesis of the whole idea came about was because I was eating a burger in Kevin's restaurant, and as I was eating, I was imagining monsters outside the restaurant, trying to break in. And then I kind of like took the idea further. What happens if like we killed the monsters and then we cooked the monsters and we fed customers, like we just had a menu that was exclusively monster meat. And yeah, that's where the idea started from. And but specifically Rapid City, I'll get to that, but because the restaurant was Betty's Midwest Kitchen, so I decided to have the game set in the Midwest. But why we decided to do Rapid City specifically is because after doing our research on the Midwest, uh, I don't know, Rapid City is the most interesting place in the whole of Midwest. In the Midwest, I guess, for me personally, because there's like so many things about around Rapid City that's really interesting. Like what the Badlands. You have the Badlands, which is like this really
Yeah,
alien landscape.
guys, I seriously, the names of your geography sound straight out of a fantasy novel or dystopic setting. Like, who goes around saying that place is called the Badlands or the Black Hills?
Yeah, it
That's
immediately catches your eye. Like you look at the map and everything. Oh, okay, this place is Sea Falls, and then you got this other place called Wall, and then you go, whoa, okay, Badlands, Black Hills, and we're from Malaysia and we don't know
yeah,
anything about.
we didn't have to work very hard to make your place sound
Yeah,
dangerous.
and then we looked into Black Hills, and oh my God, there's so much of history in the Black Hills. The whole gold rush, the Homesick mine, it being a used to be Native American territory, right? And there's just so much history in just that small little. I mean, I don't think it's little. I think the whole of South Dakota, you can fit the whole peninsula of Malaysia in it. It's a very big state. But yeah, just that area. There's a lot of interesting stories there that we can tap into for inspiration. And yeah, that's why we decided to go with Midwest 19 Rapid City. And yeah, as we keep looking into it and we keep doing our research, there's more and more interesting things that we discover. Like, the whole of that place is a gold mine. Anyway, um, I think just to move on from that, I think uh, we can talk a little bit about like how we've put a lot of characters and a lot of the characters that we've worked on. We've had to do a lot of research into them, and I think one of the earlier things that we were really concerned about was
I mean,
accent, right?
we know that we want people to feel like when they look at that place, especially if you guys are from there, that you play the game, you won't say like, hey, that's not my town. So we feel the same way. Whenever some video games put Malaysia on the map or Kuala Lumpur or something, or the movies we were looking at, like does that place look like our place? So we just want to make sure that uh, whoever stays there, whether as far back as pre-colonial era to like now, that there are people there who are representing the realities of that place, right? Because that's one of the things that we know, like our dystopic setting is actually exactly not very positive, the way we said. I mean, monsters are outside your restaurant, right? That's not always a positive thing. So we thought that we wanted to have the grounded approach of if there are people there who are from different backgrounds, they should be there, right? And they should be there, and they're talking about things that's important to them, and they're talking about things that change because of the monster's presence, right? So essentially, that's what we're actually trying to do. We know we're not going to go for full realism. No academic historian is going to say our game is a total mirror reflection of your setting, but that's why we are going with the artistic realism aspect of like, it feels like that's the kind of thing that goes on there, and we were very particular about selecting the NPCs to come from different ages and backgrounds and motivations.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Backgrounds as well, right? We have some characters who are Native American have Native American heritage, and but we don't want to dive too much into that. But we just want everybody to just feel like they're part of the community in Rapid City, and it's one of the interesting aspects of the Rapid City community, which is they have a strong Native American community there as well, and yeah, those are one of the few things that we found was really interesting and really made the story that much, I would say, flavorful. A lot of and like I said, I was talking about just now when it came to accents, right? We were very worried about accents because we were trying to be as accurate as possible. And I had seen Fargo. Fargo is a movie set in the Midwest, and they had this really, they call it the Minnesota Nice and then they've got this accent where they go yeah, 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 But after doing our research into Rapid City and talking to some people on Reddit, the community in Reddit are Rapid City. You've been really thankful. I mean, really helpful. Thank you for everything.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
thanks, man.
and
Thanks, people.
yeah, and they've told us like certain, well, like they've told us that the accent in the Midwest in Rapid City is kind of like neutral, very American neutral. So that's why there are a lot of call centers there. And the best way I think to know about it is to see how like CNN's TV presenters when they talk. That's kind of like the neutral accent. So that's what they have in Rapid City. So it kind of like made it easier for us. But there are a few things, right? Um, what was that the other day? Somebody was telling us. Was
But
it? Oop, let me sneak right past you. You know.
oofda,
Oh,
oofda.
oofda, I'm not too sure.
It was oofda, oofda. I was like oofda or something. So I don't even know how to use it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. It's like small things, and it's really nice to learn about these things, and we're trying to incorporate all these things into our our development of the narrative, right? And I think now is a good time to talk about the setting in the sense like, okay, we've talked about Rapid City, and then now I think it's a good time to talk about like how we came up with why are people eating monsters in Rapid City? And the reason why that's happening is because America is going through a new Great Depression, right? It's like a second Great Depression. And Shern, I, and Kevin, I think we were sitting outside one day at night having supper, and we came up with this whole idea. Like, we didn't want to have a game set in a post-apocalyptic world because that's been done to death, and we thought a new Great Depression would be better, and it's a good reason for people to be going hungry and starting to eat monsters that are actually attacking people. So yeah, and it's also because of the infrastructure, right? I mean, because of the new Great Depression, a lot of infrastructure is collapsing, and America being such a great place that it is, like they cannot like keep their with a lack of funding, they cannot keep focus everywhere. So some states have suffered because of that, right? Uh, do you want to talk a bit about that, Sean?
Or like one of the things that we liked was the question that always makes us ask is what does the presence of monsters do, right? Like we don't want just like, oh, it sounds cool, right? It helps with gameplay up to a certain extent. I'm not saying that that itself is not interesting, but we were asking ourselves like, what value can monsters encroaching in your space? Like I'm sure for Americans, home invasion is a huge thing. Having your own space and protecting your land and protecting your space. So in this case, the monsters do not follow any of those laws. They don't understand sovereignty, state sovereignty lands. They don't understand borders, uh, and they're not trying to. It's not like a total war for them, right? They're just trying to eat you. I think that's always funny when you have someone else thinking you are dinner, because usually we are the ones doing that.
Hmm.
So and it is working back and forth. Like they eat us while we eat them. All right. So I thought that was an interesting thing because most stories it's either someone is eating us, but we don't want to eat them, like vampires or werewolves on humans, but we're not eating them, and or vice versa, we are eating creatures that are trying to rise up.
Actually, to
But
be
here in this
honest, right?
case,
Yeah. Actually, to be honest, is the only reason why I think you might feel like that is because a lot of the time we eat food that comes from farm animals, right? And farm animals generally are herbivores
almost
and
always, actually, no,
yeah,
they are almost always herbivores. Yeah,
yeah.
they're not predators. We don't have domesticated predators for food.
Yeah, I mean, you pigs are omnivores, but
Yeah,
still again they're very placid animals. They don't go out actively hunt people down out in the wild. In fact, they're not in the wild at all. It's
yeah.
wild boars that are out in the wild. So, but that's the thing. You see, so you have to think about it like in terms of before agriculture. What did people used to do? People used to hunt animals, but those animals also at the same time might have hunted, would have hunted people at the same time. Like I'm sure
Yep, yep.
back in the day, like people might have eaten bear meat, but then you never want to go come across a bear on your own in the middle in the middle of of a forest as well, right? So no, I know I for sure wouldn't. Terrified of bears. Anyway, yeah. So so we have this dynamic. In fact, oh yeah, somebody from our community on Discord actually shared with us. recipes during the last Depression, like back in the 1939. His grandmother apparently had these recipe cards for like squirrel stew and because they were hungry, right? In the Midwest, and some if they couldn't get food, they would go out and hunt them. So it yeah. So the Great Depression was or at least we personally think like it's a great idea in terms of like to giving a good excuse for why people are doing what they're doing in the game. Yep.
So that's the setting that we're going for.
Hmm.
We we hope you guys find it not just interesting but meaningful. I mean that's why we're doing focus on narrative. Like there's some meaning behind why we think monsters encroaching on American soil. Just when they're entering their latest depression and people are trying to not just survive but trying to protect their way of life and their culture, because there's no point surviving if you lost your culture. I think there's so many dystopic stories showing that, like, how is it worth living if you no longer remember your roots or you're not able to progress from where you are. Right? It's always about that kind of question. And we thought like exploring it with the context of things that are out there, and we don't know what their nature is, we don't know what their goals are, we don't know how to defeat them. And I think a lot of this add to that mystery, a sense of mystery, because we were also talking about like how do we have this place feel like Twin Peaks? How do we have this place feel like there's this X-Files ish sort of sense? Because
Yeah,
I mean, if
Stranger
you're in
Things
that
as well.
world,
Yeah.
what's going on, right? I mean, in
Hmm.
that world, right? It's like where are these things coming from, right? So
I think yeah, that's another great thing that you brought it up also. The whole I set the idea of the setting being a small town. We really like that idea, right? Because rather than it being set in this big epic universe, with so many places like the games tend to do these days. I mean, it's also we have budgetary concerns as well. Well, of course, there is that, but nonetheless, I think having a story which is just concentrated in this small town which is struggling to survive and it's also under attack by monsters. And then you go there, try to open your business, and the town, and you actually have an impact on the town. Like if your business is well, you hire more people and you invest in vendors, and then all these things contributes to the town welfare, right? Or of course you can play differently. You can be like this bad guy who starts. Um, how much of this can I share? Okay, we have this drug
good
in.
question.
Yeah, we have this drug in the game called Misurite, and we won't tell you the origins of Misurite, but the Misurite can be added to your dishes in order to make the dishes more tasty, but you can have an impact. That I mean, not, sorry, adding Misurite to the dishes also makes the dishes a lot more addictive. So people will really get addictive. Oh, I'm getting some beeps from some other Discord channels. Sorry about that, guys. Anyway, yeah. Where were we? Yep, a small town. Yeah. So and everybody in a small town knows everybody, and we really
Like
like.
Cheers,
Yeah.
like Cheers, man. Everyone
Yeah.
knows your name.
Exactly. Yeah. And we thought it was a really nice thing to work with, right? So because you're talking with people, the only way you get to know about the story is through interaction with um, people in, I mean, with the vendors and the people in the town, right? And having people know each other helps a lot. So, yeah. Sorry, one second. I'm just. Anything to share about that, Shun? I just got to turn off a few messages. So
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
yeah.
So I mean, that's we're trying to also see like the monsters aren't just there giving you problems directly, like eating, but also like how does that change the dynamics of the town itself, right? When fear sets in, winter is coming, through the seasons. We have seasons in the game, right? And we're going through the seasons, and people are trying to prepare for the environment while they're still worrying about these things out there. Your highways, the trunk roads where the trucks are coming, and they are the lifeline of supplies, and that's getting challenged, right? So it's almost you have every odd stacked against you, a citizen just trying to live in town, and your character is the owner of a F&B, right? Like a food place is as much a cultural anchor and a social anchor and hub as like a park or a community center. Like in Asia, we tend to have like community centers in certain countries that they form the hub for people to hang out in. Um, but I think for some countries where food is a thing, sometimes a single shop or diner or restaurant becomes that kind of place. And that's why you see that, especially for ranch houses, steakhouses, it's not just going there to eat. You have corner to play pool, to throw darts. You have jukebox, that sort of thing. So we really like that sort of aspect. And we wanted to make it that you feel cozy and homely in the place that you're eating, and that it becomes like maybe even a safe haven when everything around you is going topsy turvy. So like it's almost like a home away from home sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think we're running about out of time. So um,
We tend to talk quite a bit.
yeah, me and you, because we're all friends, and we've got a lot to talk about. We're really excited about what we're doing with the game, and the characters that we are creating, and the story arc that we are creating, right? And yeah, we like you've mentioned it before. Sometimes it feels the way that it's being written is um, has has some similarities to how a TV series would have been written, right? And in the sense like we have all these characters and things are going on at different times. So yeah, we're trying to capture that kind of narrative in terms of the game as well. And you being the restaurant owner, people are coming in and you're talking to them, and one day somebody comes in and talks to you, talks about this thing, and then another day another character comes inside the restaurant and then he talks to you about another thing. But everything is all tied up between this big narrative arc, right? And and
I,
just to keep in mind, it's a survival game, so it's the story is will be a bit dark. Yes, it's yeah, it will be dark. So yeah, anything like you want to share about that as well, Sean?
I mean, other than when you mentioned like how like in TV series, we normally have a writing room and teams tend to sit down and think about what's the arc of the story and where the characters are going. We found ourselves like those elements being very helpful for our creative process in pre-production, because the crux of your narrative is coming from the characters, and like any TV show, the characters are the conduits for all this like themes that's coming up, and that was a very very good foundation for us to actually do our work. So we are hoping that all our efforts are able to create this survival tycoon game that you enjoy not just playing, but getting to know that universe through this game.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, man. Thanks, John. Thanks for your time. And if anybody guys have questions and everything, we'll try and get to them as soon as possible. But we are out of time today. So, thanks, John, for joining us for this session of the Devlog, and thanks everybody else who
Oh,
joined
pleasure.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would really like to hear your comments, guys. Like your top three overrated, underrated. I'm just plugging in again because I'm always curious what other people think about story-based games.
Yeah, me too as well. And it also helps us understand our community better. Okay, and so Sean, take care. You guys as well. Take care. Have a great weekend and stay tuned for the next devlog.
So guys.
Bye.